I cannot be the only person who constantly struggles with space optimization in my garage. My wife and I have been fighting this battle for years. We installed several storage racks on the ceiling and tried various other methods to create more room. Every year, we purge a lot of items as well to keep our garage from overflowing. Well, my mother decided to move in with us this past summer, and I quickly realized I needed another creative space-saving system for our house. After a lot of brainstorming, I decided on a custom-built storage solution installed under our carport was the best choice for our current problem. In this video series, I will show you all the steps I took to build a storage system for all our additional items that frankly would not fit in our garage. Let's jump right into the video. Not sure how well you guys can see this, but ultimately this first section that I built, I didn't get any video of how I built it because it required two people. So my wonderful wife was nice enough to hold some of the posts while I was able to get them leveled and screw in the wood that I needed. You can see the slats right in there. I'll have a picture that you can better see of those two beams put together. So anyway, she didn't particularly want to get recorded on video, so I'm going to do my best to explain how I put these together. You can see that I have a section here and a section down here. So I connected 3 posts for each post, and actually it was 6 because I had to laminate these together and then connect them to another lamination set up here and another lamination set down here. It does require quite a bit of work for me because I decided to use some of the rough cut pine that I had a lot of, but I just didn't have them in very long lengths. So the full span of this is about 9 feet, and then it tapers down to just below 8 on the far end. So starting out, I had to create long enough beams and laminate them all together in order to get them the height that I needed to put in these storage bin slats. While I screwed in these slats, my wife was holding the posts as level as we could, and we used several different types of levels. I'll actually show a picture of that. What we found actually worked the best were the ones that attach to the posts themselves and show you at multiple angles where everything is level. The tricky part is that this whole section on my carport goes downhill all the way out. And so I had to do a little bit of math, and I actually used this carport length all the way down. I measured from this end to that end, and then I measured from top to bottom and basically created a little right triangle. I'm not going to go into the details on the math, but ultimately I knew that I needed a 5-degree angle all the way from one end to the other. Now, is it perfectly 5 degrees all the way? No, it changes a little bit, but for utility purposes, it functioned just fine. And so these cuts here, even though they look like it's a straight 90, it's actually a 5-degree bevel so that they'd connect together. And I had to do that with all the bottoms of the posts. Otherwise, they'd be leaning, because if it was straight up and down, as I'm sure you can imagine, there'd be quite the lean on a 5-degree angle across. That part was kind of tricky, but I figured it out. And so once that was cut and everything was laminated, my wife held the posts for me, and then we screwed them in, and then we had to do the same for this section over here. Once you have 4 posts, so these 2 here in the front, and then there's 2 in the back, so 1 here and 1 there, you kind of have a framework to work from because it can actually stand up on its own. And then I was able to just put these next 2 posts in, so one at a time, attach it from behind, and then work my way to the front, and then put your slats in. So hopefully that makes sense. And then you keep working your way all the way down to the end. So for this video, I'm going to be explaining more in detail on this specific section. For the next video, I'll explain how I did this middle section, and then the last video will be how I finished up. So this section here was very similar to the first, but this middle section was definitely different because I went with shelves instead of the actual slats.
If you are unfamiliar with working on a project made from rough cut lumber, there is always a milling process that has to be performed before anything can be assembled. First, you have to flatten one side of your lumber using a jointer. Once you have a face flattened, you square up an edge to the flattened face using the same jointer. This step can take a lot of time depending on the twists and bends of the given rough cut board. After all your lumber is jointed on two sides, you can move on to the next step of the milling process. The next step involves planing the last rough cut face to be parallel to the jointed face. A planer is used to perform this step. It is during this phase that you can determine the thickness of your boards as well. I planed all my boards to 1 1/4 inch thickness. I originally planned to plane them to 1 1/2, but I did not have enough waist thickness to achieve this goal. 1 1/4 inches worked just fine for this build, however. The next step requires the use of a table saw. If you have been following along, you would recognize that our boards are surfaced to our desired parameters on 3 out of the 4 sides. The table saw takes care of the last side. By running the jointed edge along the fence of the table saw, we can simultaneously cut our boards to our desired width and ensure the 4th side is cut parallel to the other jointed edge. This step in the process brings all 4 faced boards to our desired dimensions. I cut them to 2 1/2 inches. We are not quite done yet though. We still have to cut our boards to length. There are several tools that can perform this task, but I find the miter saw to be the most convenient. For the first 4 posts of this build, I waited to cut my boards to length until after I glued 2 boards together. As I mentioned earlier, each post I made required 6 total boards to be laminated together. I split up the posts into 3 sections of 2 laminated boards. Each separate section was glued together on one face of the 2 boards. After each section had time for the glue to dry, I glued them end to end to make the final 3-section post.
Just like any project, you learn to do things a little bit easier as you go, and so wanted to show that for my first 4 posts, you can see that all these connected like basically end to end. I'll try to better explain it when I move to the other one, but what I'm trying to say is that I changed up how I attached these posts together, like each section, the 3 sections, after I did the first 4, because I found what I think is a better way. And you can kind of see here where it doesn't go straight across, so I actually ended up making it's kind of like a Z as it goes down. You can kind of see right here is the bottom. So I attached, and this had a longer section and a shorter section, and the opposite for the other one. So it had more glue that it could attach to, so the whole face of this, more surface area. And then when I connected them, I actually used dominoes to align them, and I found that it attached much more straight and also easier, and it was a better glue bond doing it this way. So the rest of the beams throughout the rest of the process I did in this fashion. These still hold just fine, but you can see they're not perfectly laminated. Not that these are, but these are actually much better connected, better glue bond by doing it this way. Maybe this angle is a little bit better to see. So this is the little Z that I'm talking about. So this is the longer end of the bottom post and the shorter end of the bottom post. And this is the opposite. So it sits right on top of the other one. You have a glue surface area here, here, and here, all the way around, as opposed to just straight across, which is just the cross-sectional area of this beam, which is how I did these 4 right here. This does work, but it's a lot harder to get it lined up and a lot harder to get them to dry with the glue. It's basically, it was a pain in the butt to get these to glue up compared to this section, which kind of like held itself together. Much easier to glue, much harder to glue, and I don't think this is as stable as this one. By the time you add all the slats up and down, I don't foresee there being any structural issues. Not that there's going to be thousands of pounds on these, but I'll let you know in a future video if these do create an issue, but they've been here for several weeks and they're still straight as an arrow. But I wanted to point that out. You'll learn as you move along. So first iteration, second iteration, all the way down.
To keep this video from becoming too long, I'm going to end the first part of this series here. But before I go, I want to mention the lengths of the slats that I used on the first 2 sections. To accommodate some of our longer totes, I made the longest slats 32 inches and the shorter ones 21 inches. The space between each slat is 18 inches. This easily fit our large totes with dimensions of 30 inches long by 20.5 inches wide by 15 inches high. I also put in a brace at the top and bottom of each post, but those were the same dimensions as my slats. I only added them to add more stability. Hopefully you found this video informative and entertaining. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.